Okay, it's asking me, sending me warning. Okay, it's asking me, sending me warning. Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Coming to you live from Darlinghurst, Sydney, Australia. I'd like to first acknowledge the land that I'm on today. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation. And I note that a lot of you will be on different Aboriginal lands in Australia. And we'll also have some people that aren't on Aboriginal land. We've got a few people coming in from overseas, which is really exciting. I did think that I could blur the background, but as you can see, I can't. So welcome to my kitchen. I did what I always do and put on a business shirt and my rainbow lanyard, which means I'm an authorised gay now. So joining us, we have Jill Newby, who is the Associate Professor from the Black Dog Institute and UNSW. I'm going to be jumping between myself and Jill because I don't know how to use this program. So I'll put Jill up now. Hi, Jill. How are you? Oh, you're muted, I think.
The beauties of technology. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So you're in Randwick?
I am in Randwick. I'm at home, working from home. Most of the Black Dog Institute are, stuck inside at home, working remotely.
Yep. I've given a promotion already to my dog Noodle. So he's currently the CEO of the house, but he's currently asleep on the couch. So we'll look forward to him providing some contribution later. So thank you so much for coming to chat with us today. We're up to 70 people at the moment, which is pretty exciting. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about the work that you do at the Black Dog Institute and UNSW?
Sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist and researcher, and the main area of my research is into technology-based treatments for anxiety and depression. So I've got a research lab with a range of postgraduate students that do research to try and understand anxiety and depression and then deliver effective treatments remotely.
Yeah, awesome. That's really fascinating work, and I think it's going to be very important living in this very weird time that we're in at the moment. So thanks again for coming to chat to us. So I might I'll ask you just a few questions about what we can do to look after ourselves in this time. Most of us will be working or studying from home, which is obviously a very different dynamic. Obviously there's going to be some people that already have an advantage that work from home, and that's those people that might have caregiving responsibilities. So some people are just sitting pretty already, but for me it's sort of a new experience, especially as an extrovert and someone that loves to get out of the house. So I'll kick off by asking this first question. I know that certainly there's a lot of unknowns at the moment, and it's quite stressful. I think a lot of people would agree. And there's a lot of unknowns and things are constantly changing. How should we be looking after our well-being, in short?
I mean, that's a very big question.
It is.
How do we cure mental health?
Yeah, true.
I think the first thing is to acknowledge that a lot of people are feeling really stressed and anxious and uncertain at this time, and that's completely normal and understandable. I think it's probably less common to feel not anxious at all, although we are finding some people in our research when we've done some research into COVID-19, there are actually a significant proportion who are not worried at all, and they're probably the people that are not self-isolating at the moment.
Yeah, right.
So there's a range of different things that people can do to help manage their stress levels and try and stay as mentally healthy as possible during the day and when we're working from home and when we're isolated from other people. So I can go into some of the tips, and then if there's any questions, you can just ask me.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And this is in no particular order. The first thing is making sure you're keeping your body well. And that's important from an immune perspective, but also just because we know that when you keep your body healthy, your mental health actually is optimized. So for anyone out there, just make sure you're getting enough sleep. sleep is a huge antidote to really strong emotions. You know, when we're getting enough sleep, we're less emotional, our immune system is better, we can manage just a lot of normal stresses better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is making sure you're getting physical activity. Now, I know people vary in the amount of physical activity they can do. You know, they might have conditions or pain or other experiences that can make that challenging, but any physical activity is going to be helpful. And if you're struggling to do that, make sure you put it into a schedule. So one of the things we've been doing at work is one of the girls who we work with has put on a daily exercise activity for half an hour during the middle of the day that we all log on to via Teams, and that makes us able to be active. So making sure you're looking after your sleep and exercise is the first step, and also what you're eating that can help your mental health. But then there's more general things about how to stay mentally healthy. So particularly in this time when we're all consumed with information, bombarded by email and media stories and conversations around COVID-19, I think it's really important to try as best as possible to limit your exposure to that media. It sort of sometimes has an insidious effect where, you know, we're trying to read information to get equipped with the knowledge, but that can be counterproductive because it can just make us feel sort of stressed and anxious and have this underlying feeling of stress. So limiting your exposure to media to, like, you know, maybe a few minutes a day or checking in at certain times of the day can help with that. And there's general stress management techniques that can be very helpful. So things like relaxation exercise, just spending a few minutes a day with no distractions, focusing on your breathing can be quite helpful.
Yeah, awesome. I'll put me back on the screen. Oh, hello. That's really helpful. It is about those, you know, the little things that you can do. I think we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but, you know, talking about the self-care plans. But you've touched on it already, but I've noticed that I am sitting on the couch watching television, the news, and then I'm on my phone looking at the news as well. The information is sometimes very overwhelming, and this is, you know, a very leading question, but what do you think I should do when I'm feeling sort of overwhelmed at the time?
With the information, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing it and knowing that that exposure to the media and all that information is making you feel overwhelmed, and then to break it up. So, you know, you almost need to schedule times in your day when you're having a complete break for that information. So if you feel like you can't do that all the time, then schedule at least, you know, every so often, I don't know whether it's once in the day or a few times in the day where you're completely distracted. So whether you're watching a different show that's not the news, like Netflix or Stan or something like that, that's on a topic completely unrelated to disease, illness, and stress. So something that can bring that anxiety down. I wouldn't say watch, you know, like the Netflix shows around pandemics that can just fuel the anxiety.
Sure.
Or listen to a podcast about a completely different thing. Have a conversation with a friend that's around and just have an off-topic, you know, no talking about COVID-19 for this conversation. Talk about something completely different, and that can help you get a bit of an escape from it. And one thing I didn't mention before around, you know, keeping mentally well is making sure you're connected with other people. So, you know, when we're stuck at home, working from home, or in self-isolation or quarantine, then, you know, the message is social distancing, but what that can imply is social isolation. And so I think we need to be really mindful that physical distancing is what we're trying to achieve now, not social isolation. So staying connected with friends through, you know, virtual coffee, virtual wine date, phone call can be really helpful too. Yeah,
awesome. That's something that, you know, I am certainly craving, is just, you know, talking to people. You know, I'm someone that's how I get my energy. So yeah, those online things are very going to be very important for me. And great point about not watching the doom and gloom shows.
Yes.
I accidentally watched Contagion. Terrible idea.
You're not the only one. I think it's super popular at the moment.
It is. So avoid that at all costs if you haven't already accidentally watched it. So yeah, I mean, you've spoken about some tips already for staying connected. So we've got, you know, obviously those coffee meetings with your mates. My team in the Dean's unit in Science. So what we do is every day I've put an appointment in at 10 o'clock, and you can log in, and you know, your kids are welcome, your partners, your housemates, your doggos, cats, and we try, you know, we have a chat, but we don't talk about, you know, what's happening, and it's just an opportunity for us to sort of, you know, share what's going on, and you know how exciting our apartments and houses are.
That's a great idea, though.
Yeah. So just those regular appointments, that sort of thing. And I've noticed that I've actually started looking forward to them. I mean, I love my team, but you know, I've really started looking forward to those, which is good. So it hasn't happened yet, but I do anticipate that I'm going to start getting annoyed, maybe a bit stressed, a bit frustrated, you know. Like I said, and a lot of my friends know this, as if you're listening, my almost catchphrase is, it's nice to get out of the house. And obviously not so possible now. What do you think I should do to sort of circuit break that when I'm feeling like that?
Well, I suppose what things do you normally do to circuit break irritability or when you're feeling angry?
That's true. I am fortunate enough to have a bath. So that's definitely something that I do. Put on a little bit of Amy Winehouse, but you know, she's a bit sad actually. But you know, that familiar music and that soothing sort of music, that's definitely one thing that I do. And then you know, then this is the problem that I sort of had, is that you know, it would be to go to the gym, or it would be to go for a run. I've only just started running. I can only run like 3 minutes, but anyway.
It's a very short run.
It's a short run, but I can't do it now.
Yeah.
So, you know, those sort of things keep sort of popping into my head, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. And that almost makes me feel a little bit more like stressed.
People can feel a bit trapped when they can't do the things that they normally do.
And
that's what we can find when people get injured and they're used to relying on things like running to feel less stressed. And when they don't have those skills that they can normally put in place to help manage their stress or anxiety or feeling overwhelmed or angry, then it can be, you can feel trapped and a bit stressed out about not having those things to do. So, I mean, there's some really great ideas that other people can use. And I think it's really important for us to know that we're not going in blind to this. You know, we have strategies that work for us to feel less stressed at normal times when things are less uncertain, but when we have to deal with our normal stressful day-to-day life. So if things like having a bath or listening to your favorite music help you feel less upset or less angry, then you can do that at home. That's a great idea. So if I could anticipate that I would be starting to feel more trapped and annoyed and irritable, then I would start writing a list of the things that I can do that I've done in the past that have worked. So there's some ideas. Now, if your normal strategy is to go to the gym, then make a little mini gym at home. You know, get creative. There's so many awesome YouTube videos. There's lots of people doing like online classes at the moment to help bring the heart rate up and get distracted from the stressful things that we're having to deal with at the moment. So I think you can run on the spot. You don't have to necessarily run outside. You can do exercise at home in your lounge room. Even if it's really tiny, you can do things that can help you and make sure you're getting that activity. So I think it's figuring out what strategies have worked for you in the past and then being creative in adapting them to the situation that we're in.
Yeah, awesome. And I actually, you know, sat down last night. I wrote a self-care plan, which I'll read out to you because it's very funny. A little bit later. So now, sort of, put me back on for a sec.
Yeah, put you back on.
Hi. So you know, obviously self-care is very important, but in these new, you know, working, studying, living arrangements, I had the realization that I only spend about 30 minutes awake at home. I was like, and I get along great with my housemates, which is lucky, but, you know, there's a lot of people where, you know, there might be caregivers, parents that are sort of, you know, both, you know, might be a couple that is trying to both work at home and also care for children, or maybe, you know, parents. So just being really conscious of that. What should we do if we notice people that are close to us, or, you know, whether that is just by living or, you know, partners, etc. What do we do if we notice people withdrawing or a change in their behaviour?
Yeah, look, I think they're really good questions, and you know, a lot of people are in a really stressful situation at the moment when there's conflicting advice around whether to keep your kids at home. You might be trying to work from home, your partner or other family members are there, so it can be really tricky. So managing that stress, I think, together as a family is probably helpful, to come together and like make a plan as a family how you're going to cope and survive this time. And that can be like, how can you tag team it? You know, if someone needs a bit of time out, how can you sort of manage that? Even if you're in a small apartment, could someone just take a break in another room to have a bit of time out and then come back to it? You know, I think just very simple things can make a big difference there. I'm not saying I have all the solutions. I think it's going to actually depend on the family and their circumstances and working out what works for them. The other part of that, managing stress, is I think we don't want to have too high expectations at the moment, you know, with everyone very stressed, working from home, tag teaming, looking after the kids or elderly parents or other things like that. You know, I think as managers, we can help make sure that we're not putting too much pressure on the people who work for us, but also on the other hand, ourselves, how much pressure are we putting on ourselves to try and work to the same amount, to produce the same amount of work and the quality of work that we normally would do when things are all normal. So I think easing expectations, taking the pressure off yourself might be a bit helpful at the moment. But then the other side of it, the other question that you just asked is around withdrawing. So I think with social withdrawal is probably going to be happening for a lot of people at the moment, and especially if you've had a previous history of depression or emotional health issues or social anxiety, especially if you tend to be shy and introverted, not just introverted, but like shy to the point where it's a struggle to connect with other people, or it's a struggle to be around other people. I think they're sort of risky times for you. And so if you know that you have had that history, for the people out there, you know, if you've had a history of depression or have some of these experiences in your past, and you know this is a risky time for relapse at the moment, then I think putting a self-care plan in place is really important at the moment. This is what we sort of teach in cognitive behavioural therapy is, okay, once we've started to develop skills to help manage strong emotions, then we need to put a plan in place to say, okay, what are the early warning signs that things are going downhill? How can we catch it early to notice the signs in your own self, but also the way you're reacting to other people that can tell you need to do something different? And so I think first recognising it, putting a plan in place about what things you're going to do to avoid the social withdrawal will be really important. And recognise social withdrawal might feel, you know, withdrawing from others or not contacting other people back or avoiding contact with other people might feel like it helps you ease the pressure in the moment, but in the long run, it can be really harmful to your emotional health.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, you know, the tools that we are sort of depending on at the moment, all of the electronic, you know, stuff. Obviously, we can't go and see someone in person, but you know, hopefully everyone can sort of, you know, really lean on that, you know, a text message or, you know, sending a messenger thing or WhatsApp or whatever. I've got a great group with my friends where we just sort of post funny stuff and just check in on each other and see what's going on, which is good. One of my friends just had a baby, so that's obviously some very good content coming through. Little baby yawns. It's very cute.
It's really cute. And what about, so I suppose, you know, how do you manage, because like I've had lots of contact with my friends, probably more than normal over the past few days. Staying at home, which is great. Like, it's so nice to be in touch with them and feel connected. I suppose for the people who don't have those social networks, then you know, there are other things that you can do, and that's like reaching out through the telephone support or counselling lines that are available, or EAP. If you work at UNSW, you've got great EAP services. We can have a talk to a psychologist or a counsellor remotely. So those things are actually available, and they're really great. But the other question I wanted to ask was, like, how do you manage the overwhelming contact? You know, does it get overwhelming and it be like, you know, so many people are contacting me from here, there and everywhere, and how can I sort of manage? Have you got sort of strategies to put in place for that?
Me personally, I'm you know, fine. I'm just like, everybody keep calling me.
Okay.
I'm that extroverted.
Okay. Yeah.
This is a public service announcement. Keep it coming.
So for whoever's listening, they can contact.
For whoever's listening, even if we don't know each other, we'll be new friends. It's going to be great. No, but I think you know, definitely it's terrible timing, and this is weird, but I actually had a tooth pulled a couple of days ago, so I've had a lot of codeine. But you know, that it was a time when people were sort of, you know, coming in and out of my, you know, texts and everything, and I was just like, okay, I've just got to sleep. And it just goes back to what you said. You know, you've really got to just look after those basic things. Make sure you're eating properly. Make sure that you're getting your 7-8 hours. Okay, so yes, so you know, from the aspect of, you know, obviously I run the LGBTIQA plus training, so we know that there is I can put me back up for a sec, give you a breather. Oh, no, I just put you back up again, sorry. Okay, here I am. So we know that the LGBTIQA plus community, along with many other communities as well, already have a higher statistic of experiencing mental health issues. That's including depression and anxiety. So you've touched on it already, but you know, those people, like, what should you know, I've definitely got lived experience of depression and anxiety. So what, you know, other things can we do to, you know, if we notice those signs and those signals coming through? We've mentioned the self-care plan already. Do you have any other advice there for people that have already, you know, had an experience?
Yeah, so it depends on the severity. You know, if you're obviously at immediate risk of harm, then it's really important to seek urgent help from, you know, Lifeline or one of the online counselling services. But if you're experiencing depression, anxiety, or you have in the past and you want further help, there's a few different options. So I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but the federal government, one of the great things they have done in the past week, I think maybe week or 2 weeks, has introduced new Medicare items for telehealth. Right. So that means, I mean, it is slightly restricted at the moment, but I'm hoping that will change. But for anyone who's in self-isolation, whether it's forced self-isolation or they've had contact with other people with COVID-19, or they've got a chronic disease, they're over 70, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander, or there's a few other groups that being defined as vulnerable to the COVID-19 or severe versions of COVID-19, they can get bulk billed sessions with a psychologist and I believe a psychiatrist potentially via telehealth. So that could be by phone or via video conferencing, like what we're doing now. Yep. So if you are in those groups, it can be a little bit confusing. So probably the best thing to do is to contact a psychologist near you and ask them whether you fall under one of those groups. And you can get those sessions remotely. So you don't need to travel, even if you're scared about going to the clinic. you don't need to. So long as you have a phone or internet connection, you can get access to that support.
Yeah.
Now that's those groups. So bulk build, telehealth, psychology sessions. So I would encourage people to get help if they need it. The other option is if you have already had a Medicare mental health plan in the past year and have seen a psychologist or psychiatrist once face-to-face, or at least once face-to-face, you also can get sessions bulk billed remotely. So for those people who are already linked in with a psychologist or psychiatrist, that's a really great option without having to go to the clinic. But then the third thing is there's some really great online programs that can teach people how to manage depression and anxiety and general stress.
Yep.
So there's a few ones that I would recommend. There's actually quite a few, so it can get a little bit confusing.
That's the thing. There's so much going around at the moment. I was trying to make a sort of a compile everything, and I was just like, okay, this is really hard.
Yeah, and it's
so we'll start at the top, from the top.
From the top. So there's online programs. There's actually a huge list on e-mental health in practice, but I can actually give you just some examples. So there's a free online program from the Black Dog Institute called My Compass. So that has a range of different modules that teach things like managing stress, how to relax, how to schedule pleasant activities and things in your day that are enjoyable and that help improve your mood.
Yeah.
So My Compass is one.
Yeah.
This Way Up is another one. So that's where I used to work. So I've written a couple of those programs and worked with the other clinicians on those programs. So they're either 6 to 12 weeks of online programs. So they teach about depression and anxiety and very practical skills to help manage your mental health. So they're a really great option. And I believe over the next month, most of those programs are going to be made available for free. At the moment, some of them are $60, which is actually about the amount of money you'd be paying out of pocket for a face-to-face therapy session.
Right,
so,
okay.
you know, I know people are stressed financially at the moment, but there are some free options there.
Yeah, great.
So that's This Way Up. And then there's MindSpot, which is an online service provider, which has online programs which have, 5 modules over 8 weeks. And you also get support from a clinician over the phone.
Okay, great. That's really awesome. And there is just so much. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I know that there's a lot out there, and there are other free things as well. There's my Facebook advertising. It's I was doing research for this, and obviously it's picked up on that. So I'm getting all of these things that are coming through. So there's a lot out there. So we've all got to be having a cheeky Google to see what works for us.
And it can be a bit tricky because it's obviously pretty overwhelming. There's so many different apps out there. Right. Some of them are not necessarily what they say they are. So I would try and go to the reputable service providers like university clinics, Black Dog, Beyond Blue.
Right.
Yeah, those ones we know they're supported by the federal government. They've been tested, they've been evaluated. We can trust that they're private. They do what they say they do. And they're really helpful. So that's probably what I would suggest.
Great.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Awesome. Okay, that comes to the end of our questions. So I was going to open up to Q&As from people watching. However, I very quickly realized now that I didn't turn on the Q&A function. So what we're going to have to do is take questions through my email. But while that is happening, so if everyone's ready to write down my email, it is ready. Addie, ADDIE, at unsw.edu.au. But in the meantime, as questions flood my inbox, I will talk you through my self-care plan. So I've already mentioned bath, very important. 6-minute abs. I hate doing abs. Call
Have
someone.
you stuck to that yet?
No, not at all. I mean, I made the list. Let's start with the list, okay?
Yeah. Good start.
And call someone. That's a good one. I've got I grew up in Cairns. My family's all up there. So give them a buzz, and also I've got my brother and sister-in-law in Penrith. Have a Teams meeting. So I've already put those recurring appointments in. That was just non-negotiable for me. It was the first thing I did when I found out we might be working from home. I was like, absolutely not. I will not be isolated talking to my dog all day. Look at funny memes. That's
Love
a good
it.
one.
That's great.
I've just started following like a whole bunch. I did feel a bit silly with some of them that I followed on Facebook. There's a positive news algorithm.
What's that?
It's just a website that only shows positive news.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea.
Yep. And then there's another one called the Kindness Pandemic.
Oh yeah, that's so sweet.
It's so sweet. It's maybe a bit too sweet for me, but that's okay. So there's some things. I've also started putting together my own gym routine.
Very nice.
Which is very much in the category of 6-minute abs, which hasn't happened yet. And then another silly thing that I've started doing is have a photo shoot about nothing, which is just doing funny things around my house and sending it to my friends.
Love it.
So that's my self-care plan. It's pretty easy, pretty basic. Okay, I think we're going to be ready for some questions now. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yep, so we've had someone ask about the details on the bulk build services and what's accessible. That's something I'll definitely circulate following.
Yeah.
So that's easy. Oh my gosh, we have a visitor. Let me show you this guy. That's Noodle. He's 9. He's retired. Okay, here we go.
So with the bulk build psychology sessions, what I would say is best to contact your local psychologist or GP for details about that. We can send some information around about the specific eligibility, but it gets quite complicated pretty quickly. So I think the best place to do to us would be the local psychologist or a psychologist you've already had contact with if you've already had mental health treatment.
Yep. Okay. All right, great. Okay, we'll go over to next question, which is, I'm sorry, I realize I'm not flicking between me and you, sorry. Oh, this is a great question. Helping kids, looking after kids and their mental health. Do you have any insight on that, or should we? Yeah,
look, are you able to circulate some, sorry, I just realised it's a bit loud because they're doing some cleaning work outside.
It's
this
new
is the
world
noise
order.
From home.
That's all right, we'll roll with it.
So it's gotten a little bit loud, so apologies about that. But are you able to circulate some information after this? Because I can send you. Yeah. So actually, or the other option is a colleague of mine, Dr. Eliza Werner-Seidler, wrote a really great piece that's actually on the Black Dog Institute website at the moment, and it's how to reassure your children about COVID-19 and how to make sure they're staying healthy at that time. So I think that there's a few simple strategies and things to keep in mind. All the things that work for us help as well. So making sure they're keeping active, doing fun things, pleasant events, making sure they're connected to their friends as well as the family, teaching them how to be brave when they are feeling worried or anxious, you know, teaching them about how our thoughts can make a difference to how anxious we feel, and so keeping on top of negative thoughts or anxious thoughts that make us feel worse. And then there's also around talking to them and opening up the conversation around COVID-19 as well. We know that at schools there's a lot of anxiety. Kids tend to, I don't know whether you've seen them, when there is sort of an anxiety or stress, but it tends to sort of spread a bit because they like telling the worst case scenario stories, and it can get into a little bit of a frenzy. So I think explaining to the children about the facts around kids and COVID-19 is that children have been pretty unaffected to date. If they do get it, they get quite mild symptoms. We can use it as an opportunity to teach them how to control their risk of getting the disease and also spreading it. So teaching them really good hand washing techniques, teaching them about social distancing. I know that can be very tricky for kids because it's sort of almost impossible to get them to stay 1.5 meters away from other people. But teaching them the practical things that they can do, and that's mainly hand washing. Yeah, but the information on Black Dog Institute website is really good, and it's really reassuring. Awesome. So I'd encourage people to look that up.
Yeah, I actually saw a short clip that was put out by the person you were talking about, I think, which was really, really good, nice and simple. So we'll circulate that following, which is good. So we've had another question come through. This is about motivation. Yep. So the question is, how to keep ourselves motivated when we're feeling overwhelmed. You know, especially with, especially the people that, might be, responsible for checking in on other people or redesigning their work programs. I know that mine has been completely uplifted and will change. And then also the change in routine. That's a big thing, big thing was me. First thing I do is put on my gym gear and head out, and now there's the first thing I do is just like, oh, I can't do that now. So have you got some tips on motivation?
I mean, if you can get out, then get out. If you're not completely self-isolated, then we can still go for walks outside, and I do that a few times a day now just to make sure that I'm getting a bit of space from home. For motivation, there are some fact sheets. I wonder whether they're up on the website. This Way Up has a boosting motivation handout that I will try and dig up for you that you can send around.
Right.
There's a few things about motivation. I think putting structure and routine in your day can actually really help. So one of the myths about motivation is that a lot of people feel like they need to feel motivated in order to do something. So they wait till the motivation strikes to do that action. But it's sort of the vice versa. You almost need to flip it. That if you do even a little bit of something that you're trying to feel motivated, that actually fuels sort of more of a positive cycle. So breaking something into like small bites, small steps can help, because then it makes that first little step achievable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's genius, and that's certainly something that I do regularly. It's the 2-minute rule. If it takes 2 minutes, do it straight away. So I've found that one to be quite useful. Even and in the house, I've found that I've had to incorporate that rule. Like, it's cleaning up the kitchen. That's 2 minutes. You're walking past, do it. And and now that we are working, studying, and living in the same place, all of it sort of combining together, I've found. Thank you, that's really good. We'll circulate some stuff there too.
And I've found it, I mean, I'm not very a tidy person, but I've actually found it helpful to have my house a bit tidier than normal. Because, I think when we're surrounded by chaos and clutter and stuff, it can actually be you can feed the stress and anxiety and make everything feel overwhelmed. So, I'm not encouraging obsessive cleaning or anything like that, or throwing out all your stuff. But I think having an environment that is comfortable and that you're happy in can make a huge difference at these times. Something that doesn't fuel the stress, something that actually can calm down, that can make a big difference.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Okay, so we've got a question. Someone wants to see the dog more, which is nice.
Yeah, show the dog.
Yeah, he's gone. He's having a time out. Yep, so we'll send some stuff on the mental health access stuff. Okay, this is a very serious sort of question. So there is some people are experiencing a bit of anxiety about wearing a face mask out in public, and there's a bit of a fear of you know, having some, you know, people, the fear of being attacked basically, or you know, confronted on the street, or people, you know, being rude or not nice people. What are some things people should do to manage that sort of, I guess, fear? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I don't know, are these people, have they been attacked?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
It's the fear and anxiety there.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a tricky one. What would I do? I mean, you might have some good strategies around that. I think staying to the places where you feel a bit more safe and comfortable can probably help at the moment. Is it even possible to go out with a friend or someone who you feel safer with?
Yep.
You know, so you're not completely alone.
Yep.
You know, I obviously don't know the situation this person's in, and so, you know, sort of distinguishing between what's real threat and what's anxious, you know, what we feel anxious about. And sometimes it's the way we're thinking about the situation. I'm not saying that this situation is because this person is overly afraid, because it might be absolutely realistic.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we feel anxious and afraid, it can be because we're worried about what will happen in that situation. And so I suppose just testing out a little step-by-step can help, or managing the thoughts that are fueling the anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say try and find someone to go out with you so you feel a bit safer. Stick to the situations where you do feel a bit more comfortable at the moment. If there's certain things that you just feel terrified to do, then ask for help from other people. You know, if someone can deliver the thing that you were trying to go out for, maybe that's the solution at the moment if you're feeling too frightened to do that.
Overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, if you do see your friend, keep in a nice distance.
Totally. Yes. You go out with your friend, 1.5 meters.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I saw a mate last week, and I accidentally kicked him because you know, it was like the shoe tap, and it turned into a kick. So I apologize, John. Okay, question. What oils do I use in the bath? Peppermint. Cool. So, all right. We've got a question. So, when would you recommend seeking psychological help versus using online resources? Yeah. That's a great question, actually.
Yeah, really good question. I mean, part of it depends on your preference. Do you prefer learning yourself and trying to manage yourself, or do you prefer talking to someone? That's probably one thing that you would use to guide your decision. The research in the treatment of depression and anxiety surprisingly shows that there are very little differences in outcomes. So whether or not you see someone face to face or whether you do a really good online treatment program, you get pretty similar outcomes, and good outcomes as well. You know, people can do very well, can recover from depression and anxiety by doing one of those online programs that I've talked about just before. Seeing someone face-to-face or telehealth can be helpful if you have a real trouble motivating yourself. So if you're severely depressed, or if you have a lot of difficulty staying engaged with online learning, then it can be helpful to having someone support you through that. You can get that through telephone counselling, but that can be another sort of deciding factor. Yeah, does that give you a bit of an answer?
Yeah, that's good. That's great.
Sure. Yeah, so that's sort of between seeing someone or an online program. Either or, it's important to seek help, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's actually some really good online screeners. So questionnaires that you can complete in like 10 minutes that that give you feedback about where your symptom scores or symptom severity is at. And they can help you sort of guide which type of program might help. Not face-to-face versus online, but they can tell you which online programs might be helpful. So the Black Dog Institute online clinic has one of those mental health screeners.
Yeah.
And then This Way Up has a take a test tool, which is also an online screener, which we can tell you which This Way Up program can be helpful.
Yeah, okay, great. That's excellent. I'll definitely circulate that after. Okay, this might be the last question. And this is a very day-to-day sort of experience that I think everybody is going through. The supermarket is very stressful. How do we manage our anxiety when we're going to the shops, especially when people aren't observing physical distancing?
That's a good question. It depends what's the anxiety about, do you think? Is it's just overwhelming, or is it sort of worried about contamination?
I would say it's definitely a mix of both. So that contact and people not observing, good hygiene, and then also, just the general vibe of, it's sort of just, you can just feel the stress when you're in the supermarket, I think, So sort of a mix of both of those,
Yeah, and I suppose this might apply to any sort of situation that's overwhelming. I think if you're really overwhelmed with it, then if you can try and choose the time where it's as quiet as possible, where it's less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Try and break it up. So, rather than doing a massive shop and being in there for an hour, try and get a small amount. I know that means you'll have to go back more, but it can help just make it a bit more manageable. Like you were saying, that 2-minute rule, not 2 minutes of shopping, because that might be frenzied, but like, break it up into only getting a few things, because then you know that you're going to have to only be in there for 5-10 minutes rather than half an hour.
Yeah.
The other thing, if you're worried about contamination, then you can prepare with that. So when you go in and when you leave, you can use hand sanitizer or wash your hands.
Yep.
And make sure you're following those instructions that the federal government, the health ministers are saying about washing your hands, making sure you avoid touching your face and mouth and eyes when you've touched something else. So washing your hands before you do that, and then that can help protect you.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the supermarket, I live in Darlinghurst near King's Cross, and it was such a strange experience. We were all the gays in Darlinghurst basically woke up after Mardi Gras, and everything was empty.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just wild, such a wild experience. But our supply chain is so strong. We got everything. We have everything we need. So we're quite lucky there. I will. We've got time for one more question. So, and this is sort of looking a little bit more down the track, and this will affect students probably more so. So, and people in general, I guess, unfortunately. So a lot of people, especially young people, are going to lose casual employment, which might cause further social isolation, which can trigger into things a lot more serious. And especially we know that LGBTIQA plus people, we are more likely to have casual work. We're not as likely to have permanent jobs. And then also, if you're young in LGBTIQA plus, you might not be in the most supportive environment, and especially for people that haven't come out. I know this is a very long question, but it is important. How are we going to deal with this down the track, do you think? It's a very big question.
That is a big question, and I honestly don't have all the answers, but my heart does go out to those people that are in casual jobs and are losing their jobs. I know a lot of people are in retail and all those sorts of other industries that are affected really badly right now.
Yep.
And I just feel awful for them. I mean, one of the things we did at Black Dog was we put in a submission to the government recently. We wrote a document about the the groups who are more vulnerable, who might feel the impact of this on their mental health more widely. And one of those groups is the casual workforce and people who are unemployed. And I know that they will be at risk of experiencing mental health issues because of the financial strain and stress. Like I said, I honestly don't have all the answers. I think we're trying to make the most in terms of like trying to help support people now, teach them the skills to help manage the stress now in preparation if things do get worse. And the more that we can do as a community now to prevent the spread of the disease will help get things back on track quicker. In terms of seeking help around financial stress, I would say just try not to feel ashamed about doing that. There are resources that are being made available by the government and probably more over time. So don't use that embarrassment or shame about seeking help to get the help that is out there. Because there is help and there will be some financial support that's coming for those most affected. And I don't know the specifics, but I do know there are already plans in place, and through MyGov and through Centrelink you can get support. So that'd be my main message. And then learn the strategies to help manage stress now while you can. Use this as an opportunity to put in your self-care plan in place, get help if you need it. And the quicker that we do things to try and manage the spread of the virus, the quicker people get their jobs back.
Awesome. I mean, I think you would agree, like we're kind of all in this together. That's certainly my experience, everyone. There's so much uncertainty out there, but I think I said to you yesterday, the only thing that's constant at the moment is change. Everything is sort of moving so quickly, but there are things that we can do to look after ourselves and others and those close to us, and even people not close to us. Okay, we might wind up. Jill, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it, and I've already had a lot of thank you messages coming through now. So I'll put you back up on the screen so you can do a wave and then I'll do a wave.
Okay, thanks.
That's you waving.
Thanks for coming.
This is thanks everybody.
And thanks for organising this, Andrew. It's a really good idea, and it means you're looking out for other people as well. And I think the more we can reach out to other people, the more it helps them, and it does help us too.
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was like, this is 20% my job and 80% talking to someone.
Well, start the self-care plan.
That's right. Just calling people at random. Cool. Well, thank you, Jill. And we'll talk soon, and we'll send those resources out, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.